All right. Well, welcome to the last panel of the first day of the 10th year of Sinister Creature Con.
In the days of our Lord. Thank you very much. That's what it sounded like, didn't it? It sounded like
It did sound like that.
everybody,
yeah.
amen. The collection plate will be passed around now.
Yeah, a little too pretentious, huh?
It's good.
I can't think of anyone who's led a more interesting life than our next guest. He's been a pro wrestler.
Pro wrestling manager.
Manager.
I did wrestle 2 matches and realized I'm not a wrestler material.
He's an actor. He's an announcer.
Yep.
He was the announcer and part-time host of Monster Garage.
Discovery Channel.
And host of the incredibly popular drag racing program, Pastime.
Fastest game show on TV.
He's appeared in over 100 television and film productions, including the horror classics The Crazies, John Dies at the End, and the 2003 remake of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Not to forget Hannah Montana.
And Hannah Montana. That comes up later in the interview.
Oh, sorry.
He is known as the Lost Leatherface because of a heat stroke which forced him to give up the role. I'm happy to say he's no longer lost.
No.
And we welcome Brett, the Big Swag Wagner, to our Sinister Creature Con stage.
That's when you clap, folks. There you go. All right. Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Okay, I've read that you loved horror and wanted to be an actor from a very early age.
I did. I used to be, I think the first horror movie I ever watched was Night of the Living Dead, 1967, 67, I believe, or 68.
Classic.
And I remember my mom saying, "Oh, that's a little scary," but she was like, I watched it, and I was like, "Oh my God, zombies!" In fact, to this day, if you've never watched a black and white Night of the Living Dead, you should watch it. It still holds up.
It does.
To this day, and it's also broke a lot of barriers.
It really
One
did.
of the first African American leads.
Yes,
in a movie,
true.
If you ever listen to some of his interviews, where it was a big deal. Night Gallery, Rod Serling's Night Gallery, Outer Limits, of course, Twilight Zone.
Of course.
And then, when I started to get a little older, 1978, Dawn of the Dead, another Romero film, one of my favorite movies of all time, and I just kept saying, I could do that. I could be one of those monster guys.
Did growing up close to the entertainment industry in Southern California spark that interest at all?
As I got a little older, I realized, I knew I was working the bars at 16 years old as a bouncer. My dad he said, as long as you don't flunk out of school, I'll give you a ride to Hollywood. And then he would pick me up after work, or I'd get someone to drive me a ride home, as a big kid. So, I met a lot of bouncers that were actors, and, that's what a lot of us security guys and bouncers do, and bodyguards. We try to be actors. And from about 21 years old, I started getting into acting class. I went to John Robert Power's modeling and acting thing. They're probably still around, but don't go do it, folks. It's a scam. But, I'm studying acting with kids that are 8, 9, 13 years old,
Wow.
just like. But my acting teacher at the time had a commercial agent and said, "Let me introduce you to my commercial agent." And that was so I first got a commercial agent, but it still took a couple years to get a real acting gig, like 2 years. I was just about to give it up, and I got a Tostitos commercial.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so.
Was it a natural transition then to get into pro wrestling? Was that just an extension of your acting?
So, yes. I was in a midlife crisis, about 30, and nothing was, I'm still throwing people out of bars. I'm not making a living as an actor. I'm getting these small gigs here and there. And I always liked wrestling as a kid, and I said, I could be a manager. I could do this. And a friend of mine, Rick Drazen, who's no longer with us, the Equalizer, he was also an actor, also created the image for Gold's Gym, that little bald guy.
Oh, wow.
Rick drew that up. He used to work out with Arnold back in the day. And I said, let me manage you. He was still wrestling into his later years. And he said, yeah, come on down. So I went and managed him at a wrestling thing. And I said, I think I could do this. and they let me come in, but you have to train to be a wrestler, which sucks. I'm like, I just want to talk, and and I'll take a beating, and I'll hit people with chairs, I'll trip referee, But you got to learn the business, and I did that for 6 years, and it was fun. I got to discover a couple people, some famous people, John Cena, Samoa Joe. I mean, CM Punk. When CM Punk was still working in the minor leagues, we had him on an episode of Monster Garage with Samoa Joe. It was great.
Wow. Where did you get the nickname, the Big Schwag?
From the TV show Monster Garage. Well, it came from the wrestling thing, right? I was like, well, I'm the Big Schwag. All right, so that was my faction, the Schwag Army, and I had my guys, and I was like a Bobby the Brain Heenan kind of type of heel manager. So when I got when they came to me and said, we want you to use your wrestling voice for this TV show, Monster Garage, and I said, well, can I call myself the Big Schwag? I was trying to, market it. And he goes, sure, as long as Discovery don't care, and they didn't care, and it kind of stuck with me. And then, so some people know me as the Brett Wagner, or they know me as the Big Schwag. So,
what does the Big Schwag mean?
Means nothing. It means absolutely nothing.
Well, I'm glad we got that cleared up.
Yeah, nothing really, yeah.
How did you get the role of Leatherface?
It's a great story. So, I've been acting for a few years at that time. So this is 21 years ago. And I saw that they were looking for like a local hire in Texas. And I was like, man, some bouncer, some ex-Dallas Cowboy football player is going to get this gig. And I was just so bummed that they're just going to hire some local hire, some friend of a producer. So one day I went in for a commercial audition. And if you go in for a commercial audition, there may be 7 rooms there, maybe Tostitos, Ford, Chick-fil-A. And one said TCM. And I was like, what is that? It can't be Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And I called my commercial agent, which is, I said, hey, listen, can you call that commercial lady and ask her what that is? And if they haven't hired Leatherface, will they put me on camera? She called back and said, no, they haven't hired Leatherface. Yeah, come on in tomorrow. So I went and bought a big suit at the Salvation Army, which did not fit me. And I'm fat as it is now, but I was like 360 pounds. I was big. Put this thing on, went in, just like that. It's a camera. And there was a little girl working the camera, and the casting director said, what do you want to do? And I just said, just roll the camera. And then I proceeded to pour my heart out to Michael Bay and said, Michael Bay, you don't want to waste this gig on some local hire in Texas. I mean, for God's sakes, Leatherface was a big, complex, meaty son of a gun, and he was just a big dude. It's not just, don't waste the role on someone that's never been on a set. I said a few other things, and I believe I picked up the lady behind the camera real quick and threw her over my shoulder and said, I'll see you and she squealed, oh, put me down. And I said, I'll see you in Texas. And I guess he thought it was funny.
Yeah.
And he called the casting lady the next day and said, yeah, tell that guy he's hired. And then I called 1,000 people. In fact, I called Ari Mihailov, part 3, Leatherface, first. I said, guess who's Leatherface? She said, not me. I said, it's me. And then she called back a half hour later. By the way, don't tell anybody. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I've told 1,000. I said, okay. And then I had to try to remember everybody I called and call them back, say, now they want to give me some other role in a different movie. And everybody was like, they don't want you to tell anybody, do they? I said, yeah, that's right, they don't, so don't say anything.
Well, the famous scene that you're involved in,
Yes.
in that, in the film, is the Kemper kill.
Yes.
Which is the first kill in the movie and the only scene that you're really
Really, yeah,
right?
you can tell it's me, yeah. There's a couple other, but you can't tell if it's me or
Yeah.
Andrew. So the thing is we get out there, it's super hot. I think we were June, July, or August in 2002 in Austin filming this thing. And we filmed a couple little things, and then the first real day of my filming, we're out there, and I kill Kemper with the sledgehammer. And then I'm dragging him through the house, dragging him, and I could tell I'm heating up. I'm like, I'm heating up, dragging him, and I can look at all the black mold everywhere. I'm like, oh my God, this is... And we kept doing it, broke for lunch, I believe, and then we kept coming back, and then I hit the ground. You know, I said, "Woo, let me get this mask off." And what happened is I got heat exhaustion, but I drank like 7 Gatorades outside. So after like a half hour, I said, I think I'm good. But what happens when you get heat stroke or heat exhaustion is your muscles tighten up. Your body needs water. Your body's like, I don't know, 60% water or something. And I was devoid of water. So my muscles tightened up in my back. So I had to go back in, finish this scene, and I had to slam that door. I had to drag him through the thing and then slam the door. And that door wasn't very heavy that I remember, but I was in so much pain that it was like the most awful thing. Wow. Someone had a skateboard, and we put Eric on a skateboard, and that helped a little bit. So I'm pulling him on a skateboard, I think, for a couple scenes, and then we were finished for the day, and I was like, okay, well, I need to go to the hospital. And they dropped me off. You know, so if you're in the main cast in a movie, they will take you first and get you off of the set. So you drive in a van. I remember it was like, I know this is not going to end very well. And they, all right, so they dropped me. I was the first person I believe they dropped off at the hospital. And then 3 days later, unfortunately, you know, they came. They couldn't wait. They asked me flat out how long, and I've hurt my back before. Yeah. I said it's going to take a week, and you know, I understood. It's a huge, you know, at the time, a $18 million movie, and they don't have time to wait a week for Leatherface to get healed up. And in came Andrew Bernarski, who did a great job. Yeah. You know, he was very brutal. And I never really talked about it for many years until some of the magazines started saying, hey, you know, there was another guy that played Leatherface in that movie. And people were like, what are you talking about? And then it started coming out. And then, you know, I've been blessed to go to a lot of shows. And I've met most of the, you know, I met Gunnar Hansen. And he was like the nicest man in the world. And said, listen. I heard that, you're part of the family. It doesn't matter if you were in that movie for, you know, 10 seconds. You still played Leatherface. And
right, and you're the one that won the role. And I've actually seen comments on online sites where they're discussing the film. And they say, and this is no reflection on the other actor that took over the role, but they say, well, I thought that the first scene, that was Leatherface to me. That facially, even with the mask on and the movements. So part of it was that you made quite an impression in that brief screen appearance. Yeah, it's awesome. You know, 21 years later, I'm very good friends with our director, Marcus Nispel now. In fact, we're going to go to Germany together next month. Or in August 1st, we're at a Germany Weekend of Horror. I'm going to say that right. Weekend of Horror in Germany. Daniel Pearl, the DP, the cameraman on ours, and actually he was the camera guy on the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre as well. Yeah, who's an amazing man. We're buddies, and you know, it's good. I'm an actor who wanted to be an actor because I loved horror movies. Not many people can say that. Sure. And I've been blessed to do a lot of stuff, and I'm still working. Now we just finished up the Desert Fiends 1 and 2, which is, you know, very campy 80s, very gross. Hills Have Eyes meets a few other things. So, you know, and I still audition for all the big stuff. And listen, they're going to do another Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I think right now is they're trying to figure out who's going to be the director. Now, I don't want to play Leatherface again, but I'd sure love to be killed. By Leatherface, but you know, it's a very small community. The guys that are still alive that have been in the movies and that have played Leatherface, and very blessed to be a part of that and to know the guys. So it's pretty awesome. Of course. If you had been able to complete that role, yes, I'd be a millionaire. Well, how would you have approached the portrayal of Leatherface? What do you think you could have brought to the character that would have made your interpretation different? Oh my gosh, would you have used your wrestling background to maybe, you know, your physicality? It's funny because you think about that stuff,
And you go, how do I do this? There's so many good guys that are my friends anyways that have played Leatherface before, so how do I make it different? How do I make it different than what Gunnar did? You think about it, but when you get to the set, it's all out there. You just, when he says go, you just all right, action, you just do it, right? So I don't know what would have been different than what Andrew did. Andrew was very brutal and did a very good job, but I'd like to think I would have been a little different, and of course, I would have gone on to be in the beginning as well.
Yeah.
And that would have been awesome. But I would have made sure that I would have done at least 3.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, yeah.
Sure. Who knows?
Did having that experience in that role and being faced with conditions that caused your heat exhaustion, did that cause you to change anything about your selection of roles or the productions you selected?
Not the roles, not at all, especially not back then. I still was young, dumb, and, I'm very careful. Even now, I'm 57 now, so I'm very, what are we doing? You all right back there? Are you not wearing deodorant? What are you doing? Oh, you're airing yourself out. I'm sorry, folks. She was doing the chicken thing back there, and I didn't know what was going on. As you get older, obviously, I don't do as many of the physical roles. I can do fight scenes, and, even in a movie that you have something there that's very special from the Crazies. Yes. I did a full burn, and I'm not a stuntman, so... but I just make sure I'm hydrated, and stuntmen, they're there for a reason, so... That day when I was filming, if my stunt guy would have been there, I would have finished that movie.
Oh, gosh.
But this is the first time. So that was 7 years later. I auditioned for that and was John Papsadera, who's a very famous casting director in LA. I got that gig. I auditioned for him for the Crazies. And that was such a fun movie, very physical movie. And they didn't really like my stunt double, so they said, "You've done a burn before, right?" And I said, "Of course. I've never done a burn before, ever." But when you're an actor, they tell you, don't say no. Because if you say no, the next guy is going to say yes. And if they ask you first, you just say yes. So then my stunt double, Chris Carnell, he passed away, he was My Bloody Valentine 3D, he was the miner, and also a very excellent stunt man. He was one of the stunt guys on this movie. He came to me, he said, "Have you ever done a burn?" I said, "Well, I did one on my arm." He's like, "That's not what he was asking. You're going to do a full burn." And I was like, wow. So he had like 5 seconds to think about it, whether he was going to snitch on me or not. And he said that I had been doing such a good job with all our fight scenes on there, and I listened very well. He goes, "All right, I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. I got about 5 minutes to tell you what's going to happen." And we did it, and then I did a 3/4 burn, and then I did 1 full burn. And maybe you're only holding your breath for 20 seconds, 15 seconds, but it seems like it's 8 minutes when you're on fire.
Oh, I bet.
But still my favorite movie of all time that I've done so far.
Well, being on the cover of Fangoria, I mean,
listen,
that's like being on the cover of Time magazine if you're a politician.
It is the biggest deal in the world is to get a cover. Now the biggest thing in the world will be able to get another cover of Fangoria. Then if you've done twice, you're like in, it's Kane Hodder stuff.
Yeah.
Sure. Robert Englund and all that stuff like that. Derek Mears and some of these people that I look up to that have been on the numerous covers. But yeah, for a young horror movie fanboy like myself, Fangoria magazine growing up was a big deal. So,
oh, yeah.
So that you're on the cover of that magazine was like...
Well, I told you I have this collection at home. I have a whole bookcase full of horror film magazines.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, well, which one was he on? And I looked up the number, and sure enough, I just
there it is, man.
Pulled it out.
Yeah.
There it was. What did you think of the final film, and was it difficult for you to go see it knowing that you had to pull out of it?
Never watched it.
Not to this day?
No. I've watched it now because you go to conventions sometimes and they'll play it. "Hey, we're going to play your movie." I'm like, okay. Or you go do a double feature, and I go, all right. And I tell people, watch the first 15 minutes, then you can turn it off. No, but it's such a well-done movie.
It is, and it has the same look as the original. I guess that's because the
Daniel
cinematographer
Pearl, yeah.
is the
It's
same.
such a good movie. It's still probably the most brutal. I don't know if anybody will ever make another that brutal Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I don't know if it can be done. I do like the one Netflix did. My buddy Mark Burnham plays Leatherface on it. The bus scene is amazing. I mean, we'll see. They're going to do another one, I think, next year, and we'll see what they can do. I think you got to have, especially something like that, like a Michael Myers. I mean, Michael Myers, Jason, Leatherface. They got to be really brutal. And I think I love all the ones they did, but ours just seemed to be something pretty spectacular. So, is it better than the original? No, nothing's going to ever be original. Now, is my version of the Crazies better than the original? 100%. I love George Romero, but if you've never watched the 1970s Crazies, it's a little different.
Yeah. Well, what was it like working with Timothy Olyphant?
Timothy Olyphant's great. We used to call him 24, at least I did. He is the smallest waist known to mankind, that bastard. I mean, women are jealous of his waist. He's a great guy. He's all business on the set. He's an actor's actor. He was great. I remember when we went to the red carpet premiere, he came up and he was like, "Hey, how are you?" And I said, "Oh, hey, how you doing, Mr. Olyphant?" He goes, "That fight scene was really good underneath that truck, wasn't it?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, and I had never really done red carpet stuff before. So what do we do? He's like, "Just smile, shake the hand." And go, I'm like, "All right, and you're really nice guy." And he's a great actor.
One thing about the horror genre is that if you're involved in a franchise, and like you said before, even with a brief screen appearance you made as Leatherface, but you're connected with that role for the rest of your life.
Yeah, which is great.
And this is the proof.
Which is fine. Yeah, it's awesome. But listen. I mean, a lot of us were very blessed. I do a TV show / podcast with Felissa Rose, and Felissa Rose, Sleepaway Camp was 40 years ago.
Right.
And she's had such an impact on people in that movie that, she works a ton. We call her the triple dipper because she'll not only does conventions, but does like 20 movies a year and produces and does everything else. And we're doing a show that I believe Screenbox is going to pick up. They sent us a contract. We just got to go over it. But it's a small community. The con life, we call it, and everybody's great. I've met some really good people. The Doug Bradleys, the Miko out there, Miko Hughes, who's a great friend of mine, and Jeff Daniel Phelps is a great guy, and David Howard Thornton.
Right.
We're blessed that we're allowed to come out and spend a weekend, to meet the fans and take pictures and make some money and have a tasty beverage and get away from reality, which is great. So.
Well, it must be a great feeling to touch people so deeply
and not go to prison. Sorry, I was there.
I just laid that up for you, didn't I? Because so many people that I've run into at cons, they have such a personal reaction to the films and the characters in the films. And it just seems that that's almost like a special responsibility for the actor to.
Well, if you watch, like Felissa Rose in Sleepaway Camp, it was a big deal. Really one of the first transgender actors. I mean, if you want to say that, the character. And I've watched people come up and cry at her booth. That movie meant so much to me. It's such a big deal, and I'm just like, wow. Or someone comes over and says, it's a neat thing, and you have to be very careful when people are coming up and they're very vulnerable about that stuff.
That's true.
You have to be very nice because, listen, doing a convention, when I first did conventions 20 years ago, I didn't know how to act at a convention. I didn't know how to be. I probably was rude, and I was just about sign this or leave. You can't do that.
Yeah,
that takes away from everything, and we are very blessed that we're allowed to do this, and horror movies, and especially this show is amazing. So, in
that's
fact, put your
nice to
hands
hear.
together for these guys that put this show on. This is a great show. They're not all great shows, right? But these people, the staff is great. The people they bring in, the celebs are great. Yeah, it's not just, you have to, it has to be a little bit more than just a payday to go do stuff because, people, it means a lot to somebody when you meet Robert Englund. I'm a fanboy. Like when Doug Bradley took a picture with me in my Leatherface costume in England. And I was like, oh my God, it's Pinhead. And he's so nice and he remembers me. And to me, it's just an amazing thing because above all else, I'm a fan. So,
Yeah. Well, it's just like in your position, it's a moment for you to give somebody that amount of your time, but it's something they're going to carry with them for the rest of their life.
It's a big responsibility to be
It is.
And I've watched some people that don't think like that, and you can't do that.
Yeah.
You can't show up 3 hours late to shows. You can't, if you watch a David Howard Thornton, a Bill Moseley, a Felissa Rose, Skeet, all the guys from Scream, they will sit there they'll sit there and sign until the last person. The con could be closed, but there's still 100 people in line, and they will sit there and sign, as I will too,
Sure.
until the last person gets their autograph.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the film John Dies at the End, that was directed by Don Coscarelli.
The most amazing man
yeah,
in the world.
who is actually one of my personal favorites.
Phantasm.
What was that? What was
Bubba
that?
Hotep.
Oh, yeah.
So Don had already shot that movie. They needed something else. He said, I need like some big Nazi redneck in the beginning of the movie. And that's funny because that Fangoria was sitting on this guy's desk. He goes, I need something like that. And the guy he was telling that to is a friend of mine. He goes, how about I get that guy, I'll get that same guy and we'll get that same look. And he goes, I'll take it. So that night, this guy calls me on a Sunday night and says, Brett, would you like to work with Don Coscarelli tomorrow? I'm like, are you, what? I said, yeah. Are you kidding me? Because he's a hero. Phantasm, he's a hero of mine. One of the nicest guys in the world, if you get to meet him. Very much like John Carpenter, Mick Garris, and some of these guys. And Don is just a saint. So it was great to work with. I was in awe.
Yeah, I had the chance to meet him at a con, Sinister Creature Con, by the way. And he had his the ball from Phantasm.
Oh, my God.
And he made it a point to just sit there and to take this series of pictures where it's entering my head.
Nicest guy in the world.
Yeah.
Great wife. His daughter makes like diabetic, has a cookbook for diabetic desserts. And I'm diabetic. It's such a good family. I wish he directed more, to be honest with you.
Yeah, for sure.
Questions from the audience?
Yes, questions from the audience.
Anybody? Yes, sir.
Here we go.
If it is, will you give me $5,000? Okay. It is not, but that is Scott Stoddard, who did our mask for the movie. That is a mold from my face, my original mold for the movie that Trick or Treat Studios puts out. I only have 4 left, so you better get whoever to come get you one.
Next question.
If you were to pick it, Roddy Piper or Hulk Hogan, who would you pick?
Neither.
Wow.
I would go Ric Flair, or I'd go like Stan Hansen, or Bam Bam Bigelow. Yeah. Anybody else? Last question. Sir, you're talking in the middle of my interview, so have a question for me. Come on. No, he's right there. He's got one.
What was the most intense movie to film?
Oh, good question.
That's a good question. Desert Fiends 1. I filmed it 2 years ago. It was freezing. We have these weird cost. You're not old enough to watch it yet, but you will be eventually. And it was, when it's, heat is one thing, but when it's something that's so cold and it's like 30 degrees and you're in a cave in the desert of Nevada, it's very tough. But I love doing it. Yes?
Have you met The Rock?
I know Dwayne, yes. He's a great guy. All right, hey, ladies and gentlemen, give it up for your man right here making the questions. Yes. And for the next hour, we'll give you $5 off anything at my table.
Oh.
Can I get a picture
Yeah,
of
of
you
course.
together
Yeah.
with the background? You guys can stand. Stretch your legs.
Maybe $10. How's that?
Depending on how he feels, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
too old, guys.
Yeah, I know. I'm right there with you.
All right, guys. All right, awesome. And then he would like some solo photos of you with the backdrop.
And the mask, of course. Very good, sir. I like it. I'm going to take a couple more. Very good. And one more, please. Hang on. Okay, there you go. Nice job. Thank you.
Brett, thank you so much. That
Thank
was
you, man.
terrific.
Appreciate
Really enjoyed that.